in the here and now, and they're not seeing it as the dreamlike condition it is. And it's like a dream in the sense that it's temporary. We never know when we're going to wake up from it, and everything that we think we're so familiar with, including our very body, our very human existence, is gone. Everything, all our family and friends were removed from, all our possessions, all our money, everything. Everything that we're familiar with can be suddenly taken away from us at any moment. To me, that's practical, is to think about that, to understand that there's a God that is involved here, and it's not a distant God, but it's a one that's close to us, that loves us, that understands us in a way that nobody else can love and understand us, and that it can counsel us and help, when we get off track, and get us back on track. That's doting over us day and night. And this is very important. In my mind, it is. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother making this series of videos and trying to help other people understand what I think is imperative stuff. Okay, that we've really got to give a damn, because giving a damn is loving. And these things come from the commandments that Jesus taught. He said, look, the 10 commandments are great, but you see, it's going to kill all of us if we try to live by the letter of the law. We've got to live by the spirit of the law. And so he gave us these new 2 commandments that fulfilled all the law and the prophets. He said, if you do these 2 things and live by them, then you will please me. Because it's easy to please me. You see, Jesus said, my yoke is easy, my load is light. This is good news for everybody. This idea that, we're not meant to die. We're supposed to have eternal life and go to a much better world, not be stuck in this crap hole forever. Because a lot of people can just ride off, being, in this world now and just say, well, it's temporary. I'm going to be dead. But they don't think about where they're going from here. But the whole idea is to think long and hard about where you're going from here, and having the right values and all this, and taking counsel from God, and saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to be overly invested in this. And all these people that I perceive, they're all around you, people that are overly invested in the world. And their values are wrong. They're serving 2 masters, but they don't even repent and confess that their one master is wrong, that money has to go. And they're not thinking about going to a better world, one without money. What's it going to be like? They don't use their God-given power of imagination to think big, to think like that God-like creature that we are. And we also need to temper that with knowing we're frail and weak and feeble and sinful and in need of God. So we need to have great humility and humbleness of heart mixed with this whole thing. So while we should think very highly of ourselves, it's also important to temper it with thinking very lowly of ourselves and very soberly of ourselves. But these 2 new commandments Jesus gave were basically, in a nutshell, to love God above all else, which makes sense. I mean, it's just like that should be all-consuming love that we have for God, because you realize this is the one that gave us our very existence and everything good we've ever experienced or will experience or ever could experience. He's the giver of your beloved. Okay, remember who created your beloved, who loves your beloved more than you can ever imagine, no matter how much you love your beloved and you know you would die for your beloved. You know that he loves your beloved infinitely more, and he's a jealous God, so you want to make sure that you have the right perspective here, the right perception. And that's the first step, is acknowledging God and glorifying God above all else. Give glory for God for everything good in your life and nothing bad. Don't blame God for anything bad. It's not his fault. Just like it's not the fault of the crappiest parent that anything bad befalls you. It's the fault of evil. Okay? That's it. So, love God above all else. And then he said the second commandment is like this, the first one, is to love each other as he loves us. So the same love that we have equal access to tap into, to acknowledge the fact that we're being doted over day and night, that God has gone so far as to number the hairs on our head, we should all give a damn a lot, really care about pleasing him. And how do we please him? Again, right values. What are his values above all else? I mean, if you had to put values in order, right, then the greatest value in this whole world is human beings. It's you and I. It's each other. The souls of men. That's it. There's no greater value. So love one another. care about each other deeply and profoundly, care about one another. And when you do that, your perspective will be proper. You'll be living by the golden rule of treating others the way you want to be treated. And you'll come to a state like myself where you say, hey, you know what? I look around me, I think of all that I have, and I think, I'm financially insecure. I mean, if you put me on a scale in America, and I'm definitely in the lower half of, those that are financially well-heeled. But nevertheless, I've got enough to give me compunction about what I have. And when I look around me and I say, wait a minute, look at all these, better men and women than me living out on the streets, some of them dying out on the streets. They're not criminals. Otherwise, they'd be safely ensconced behind bars with 3 hots and a cot at a cost of $50,000 a year to the taxpayers. Jesus said, whatsoever you do or fail to do for the least of these, you do or fail to do for me. So I live in this world with all these better men and women than me that have a lower lot than I, that have far less than I do. Because if you put me on a scale with somebody that's living destitute out on the street in their car, couch surfing or something else, I mean, I look like a king. And I'm ashamed. That's the compunction. That's what you're supposed to have. Okay, and I'm a selfish man. But I understand the inextricable tie between selflessness and selfishness. So when I go to bed at night, the only way I could clear my conscience in order to sleep is to talk it over with God and say, hey, you know what? I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I don't want any more prosperity. Okay, until I see that everybody has at least as much prosperity as me, and the accompanying freedom and the accompanying security that comes with that prosperity. So I've got a big problem, but my big problem is not my big problem alone. It's everybody's big problem. And we've got this big problem collectively together, and it is a big problem. We're in a lot of trouble. We've been manipulated into a corner by things like the mainstream media, things like these very powerful but tiny critical masses of people in key positions that are influencing us. We're depending on for our education, for our information, for empowerment, so that we have that knowledge and the power that comes with it. Accurate. But you see, it's rife with confusion and doublespeak and all this nonsense and words that aren't defined. I mean, the mainstream media, they got everybody convinced in California how good it is that you've got your equity is increasing. Don't ask why. It's just the way it is. It just happens naturally. It's capitalism. And they say the value of your house goes up. And so they use this great euphemistic word because higher value is always good, right? But they won't talk about how you could also correlate the term value, the way we use it, with a term like burden. And you think, what could burden possibly have in common with value? But let me ask you, is not one man's greater value, the equity in his house gone up, another man's burden? If I have to pay the price, the cost, the burden, you see, now you start to see the connection between burden and value, because I've got to pay a higher price when I go to buy your house with this manipulated higher value. I have to pay a greater burden, a greater price, because now you understand the tie between burden and cost and price. When you got to pay the cost, you got to pay the price. Those things are burdensome if they're high, if it's a high price. Right? If it's a nominal fee, if it's a low price, then it's not so burdensome, is it? So you understand now what I'm talking about here. So here in California now, we got a majority of people that are renting. They can no longer afford to be homeowners. It's been taken away from us gradually, slowly, incrementally. Look up the Overton window. Okay, it's very important to look up words for yourself. I constantly look up words that I thought I already knew just for a greater understanding, because the ability to communicate is very important. So you've got to be coherent, cogent. and help people to understand what they're missing in terminology, what the mainstream media spews out, how they're reading off scripts and teleprompters, and they just get talking points from some grand poobah at the mainstream media that says, talk about this, focus on this, don't talk about that, make a mountain out of a molehill here, make a molehill out of a mountain over here. Do you understand how this works? And this critical mass, all it is, it's the amount needed to get the job done. So you could have 1 million people, let's say the whole society, the whole civilization is comprised of but 1 million people. And you could have 2 people in that society that are in positions of power and control. Let's say one's a politician that gives the authority, the rubber stamper for the money printers. So the other person that has the power in the right key position is the money printer. So we got a politician and a money printer, and they are the critical mass to get the job done, to create the policies that the other 998 people, 998 people have to live under. Do you see how that works? That's it. So, democracy's out the window, a republic is out the window. We got a tiny amount of people that are controlling us and manipulating us into believing the way they want us to believe, thinking the way they want us to think, which is confused and ignorant and disempowered.